You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Infinite diversity.
Live long and prosper, and welcome to Infinite Diversity, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the BQN Podcast Collective. I'm your host for today, Chrissie, and joining me is my co-host, Thad. Thad, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. I'm getting the feeling that, like, when I get upset, it somehow makes a whole bunch of things explode, and that's probably bad. But other than that, I'm fine.
Yeah, let's get you some Vulcan meditation techniques or something. Help you keep an even keel there, so that we can continue using the space equivalent of fossil fuels. And joining us today is Carl Wonders of License to Spiel. Carl, how are you doing today? Thank you for being able to be here.
Thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Good deal. Before we jump into our topic for the day, we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons who make this show possible, particularly the associate producers, you and me, Carl. And listeners, you can hear your name listed here as one of our associate producers for a monthly subscription of just $10 at patreon.com/BQN. And with a monthly Patreon subscription of just $5, you can join our Meetings of the Hive Mind. Check your Patreon messages for details on when those happen.
This is a Patreon roundtable episode of Infinite Diversity.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I like it. Yeah. Right. Okay. So we have a very sad piece of news here.
Yes.
Over the week, Ken Mitchell passed away. I'm not going to say it was unexpected.
No.
Certainly.
I was
he's been
actually
sick a
surprised.
long time.
I saw a couple people saying it was unexpected, and I'm like,
Well,
what?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
the specific date, sure, but
yeah.
So yes, it's very sad.
Yeah.
Kenneth Mitchell had been fighting with ALS for
A decade at least.
Actually, no, it was only 5 years.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
He was, as I recall, as far as I can recall, he was diagnosed in 2019.
Okay.
I think it was during they were filming season 2, if I remember right.
Yes.
Because
Oh yeah.
Yes, I think when he was doing Tanavik, I think he either said something to somebody or was starting to feel symptoms of the condition around then. So that's not long at all.
Okay, well, that would have been 2018, I guess. But
I just know there's a story connected
yeah.
with the filming of that episode and his.
Yeah. Anyway,
ALS,
I know
so.
that at Vegas in 2019, he had recently been diagnosed, but was still private about it. And I remember kicking myself because he was on the list of people that I wanted to get a photo with at a table selfie with in Vegas, and he was never at his table, and I went by there. Yeah, whatever. It happens.
That's all right.
I do have photos with him from later cons, but
There you go.
it would have been nice to have. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
And then on the 2020 cruise in the first week of March 2020, right before the world changed.
You mean the Star Trek Super Spreader that you were on in 2020?
I honestly,
yes.
I don't think it was. I think we lucked out. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure plenty of people got insert respiratory disease here, which may or may not, some of them may or may not have been COVID, but like there wasn't a big outbreak from that cruise. It was right before everything. Yeah, I know. Like, I know I wasn't sick after that cruise. And I even went to Disney World the day we got off.
You have some serious, like, you're just surrounded in antibodies or something.
Or something, yeah.
You were saying,
on
though, yes.
The 2020 Star Trek cruise was when he went public with it, because that was his first public appearance after he started using a chair, and that was a a very emotional experience there. And when he had been on the cruise the year before, he actually did, I believe, 4 different Star Trek cruises. And one thing that he did every time he was on there was he held the House of Kor Klingon rave.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2020, which again was just after he'd been diagnosed, he did a big they did a big thing for this was when he was still speaking with his own vocal cords at that time, and he told this story to us, and he said that one of his dreams has always been to crowd surf at a big event. So he actually did it. He crowd surfed at the Klingon Rave in 2020 while the Discovery music theme music played, and all of the fans just and the other actors like Anson Mount was there, Mary Chieffo, Ethan Peck, and we just carried him around the dance floor. And it was fantastic. It was awesome. And then he did come back for later cruises, and we still did the rave. And then the really sad thing, I mean, is just literally, I think it was 2 days before the announcement, before we heard about his passing. This year's cruise set sail, and at the launch party where all the actors were introduced, one thing Mary Chieffo did when she came up on stage was take a video of all of us in the crowd telling him that we loved him, so that she could send to him. And I really hope he had a chance to see that before,
I'm sure he did.
And then there wasn't a House of Kor rave on the schedule on the cruise this year because Ken wasn't there. But after the news came out, they moved some things around and decided they were going to hold one last House of Kor rave, and they even managed to find the banner, which I thought was impressive. There's a big banner with all of Ken's with Kor, Tenavik, and Aurelio on it.
Nice.
It was great. And Mary Chieffo was there, of course, and she introduced us all. She started off the rave, and she led us all in the Klingon death ritual, where we counted down from 3 in Klingon, and then did the Klingon death howl to warn Sto-vo-kor that a warrior was on their way. And it was pretty great. And just that bookending that with from 4 years ago when he did the crowd surfing, it was very emotional, and I couldn't think of a better way to send him off.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, of all of the times for him to go, for it to be at a time when you could do that, when you had that crowd together who would understand and appreciate that, and for the world to see, that video. If you haven't seen, I know Thad posted it on Twitter and the various, I'm sure other people did too, but I only saw yours, and it was it was affecting. Yeah.
I had a chance a day or two later on the cruise to talk to Doug Jones, because for anyone who has never been to an event that Doug Jones is at, he just hangs out with everybody and talks to everybody and hugs everybody, and it's great.
He's a super spreader. No. Sorry.
Wow.
Oh,
if we were on Trek FM, I think our episode title would be Doug Jones is a super spreader.
You're right. You are right.
But anyway, I was talking to him, and he said that honestly, for the actors to be on the cruise with each other and the rest of the Star Trek family, when they hear something like that, is really good. He compared it to last year's Star Trek cruise, which he was also on, where the news that Discovery had been canceled came out while we were on the cruise.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. I can see that comparison. That makes sense.
Anyway, Kenneth Mitchell was a fantastic actor and just a really decent, great person. And he will be greatly missed. Yeah. But
his work will live on, and our appreciation for him. And, as Dr. McCoy says, he's not really dead as long as we remember him. So, There's always that. But, right, so that actually isn't the worst segue to Thad. Tell us all about the cruise, other than the announcement that a warrior was headed to Sto-Vo-Kor.
The cruise is great. Probably one of the best ones I've been on. Definitely better than last year's in several ways. Big one being the weather. Last year we went out of LA and had freak winter storm weather in LA. And also just the seas were very rough last year. Lots of bouncing up and down. Like you could only I think there were only like 2 days on the whole cruise. It's a 7-night cruise where you could really use the swimming pools on the cruise last year because it was cold and it was also too rough seas. One thing I distinctly remember from last year was and thankfully I don't get seasick, so the rough seas really just getting bounced around. For a lot of other people they were far worse. But I remember sitting in the buffet last year, which is up on the 11th deck, so very high up, because and this is something that threw me off the first time I went on a Star Trek cruise, because I'd never been on a cruise ship before. Is on real ships they don't number their decks like they do on Starfleet ships. The first deck is the lowest deck, and the highest and the highest number is the highest deck.
Okay, I never thought about that.
Really throwing me through a loop for a little bit the first time I went on the cruise, because the only time I'd ever really considered ships with deck numbers were on Star Trek.
Yeah.
You got the deck numbers in Star Trek 5. That fits. Deck 99.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was.
I do not want to go on a 99 deck cruise ship. That sounds miserable.
Even that giant one that just came out, I mean, that's not that big.
Yeah, no, the Icon, no, it's not that big.
Anyway.
But I remember sitting in the buffet, facing the on one side, near the windows, facing the windows on the other side. So I was on the port side, facing the starboard side, and I could see the horizon just moving from the bottom of the window to the top of the window. And these were not small windows.
No. I'm glad I didn't go on that cruise.
Yeah, it was a bit rough. The last couple days they actually when the seas get to a certain point, they actually start putting barf bags out in various public places so that people can use them.
That actually makes perfect sense for them.
Yeah.
Because that's less for them to deal
Thankfully,
with. Yeah.
So that was a little interesting last year. I will say I still had fun last year.
I'm sure.
The other thing, last year was a sold out cruise because it was the first one out of the West Coast. So a lot of people that can't normally make their way to Florida were going on that cruise. And it's great when it sells out. That's awesome. We want the cruise to keep going. But I will say this year it was not sold out. I don't know the full numbers. I just know that they were still trying to sell cabins right up until the last day. But what I do know is that it was a lot easier to find a seat in a lot of different places on the ship this year.
Yeah.
Last year there were
a
couple times at lunchtime where it was a real struggle to actually find a seat for lunch.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
this year I never had that problem, so that was nice. Some of the also a couple of the venues, depending on what's happening, do still get packed, but that's just how it is.
well, yeah, I would expect that.
Anyone who's been to STOV will know this struggle. If you want to go to a science talk by Dr. Mohammed Noor, you need to be there 20 minutes early if you expect to have a seat.
That's cool.
But that's great. Mohammed's a great guy, and he does fantastic science talks.
And I love the idea that the science talk is standing room only.
Yeah, I know.
That
right?
makes me very
Me
happy.
too. Yeah, that's great.
I mean, admittedly, that is our tribe, right? But still.
And the final reason, at least for me, that this year was better than last year, is that knock on wood, I don't have COVID this year. Last year the cruise liked me a little too much, I think, because
Gosh, that's right.
Hey, if you had to trade seasickness or COVID, and the COVID's after.
The COVID after the cruise, I mean, yeah. But the thing is, I wasn't seasick and I didn't get COVID this year, so it's the best of both.
Yeah, so that's better. Yeah.
Anyway, this year it was in the Caribbean again, and we went all the way down to the southern end of the Caribbean, to Aruba and Curacao, which are part of the Dutch West Indies or Dutch Antilles. Anyway, I think both have been used.
Yeah.
And they were very nice. It was nice and warm, sunny, and in the 80s. It was rather humid. You couldn't walk for I got off and walked around to the ports, and like you definitely could only do that for so long because it was just very hot. but they were very nice. Very nice to see. It was cool to see different places that I hadn't been before. Could tell that they were very tourist locations because all the signs were in English. In fact, some of the signs were in English and Spanish, which I found amusing because there are 2 official languages in Aruba and Curacao, and neither of which are English and Spanish.
Wow, yeah, that tells you right there.
It's Dutch, and then a Creole of the native language, which off the top of my head do not recall what it's called. Yeah, those are the 2 official languages. But yeah, cool. It was a lot of fun. Weather was great. We had nice calm seas. Swimming pool was open the whole time. And because this was 2 ports instead of the usual 3 because they were so far away, we had more sea days, which meant more programming, more things to do on the ship, or panels and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun. If you've never been on the cruise, it's hard to describe how different it is from a typical convention, but it really, they're apples and oranges, honestly. You have panels like you have at a convention, but you're just immersed in Star Trek for a week, and it's amazing. It's like being in the Nexus. They changed the names of all the bars and restaurants on the ships to be various Star Trek themed. Like this year, we had the nautical bar was called Mariner's Retreat, and it was Lower Decks themed. There were images of all the Lower Decks characters wearing like 18th century sailing uniforms, and
nice.
Lower
Decks meets Beginning of Generations.
The sports bar was the Spore Drive, and they had an episode of Discovery playing all the time there. The rum bar, which is also the karaoke bar, was named Subspace Rhapsody this year. And
appropriately
most of the
so.
drinks on the menu were named after the songs from Subspace Rhapsody, so that was great. Nice. Yeah, it was the British pub was the Gregarious Gorn.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
That makes sense.
Cool. Yeah. The casino gets turned into Quark's Casino, obviously.
Well, yeah, if they did anything else, that would just be what?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's fantastic just spending a whole week on a ship filled with Trekkies. It's this weird, and I've seen a couple people commenting on the Facebook group about it. It's this weird situation where it's the one time when you actually do like talk to the people you meet in the hallway, just say hi and hello, and like it because everybody there is a Trekkie. It's you have common interests with every person you meet on that cruise.
And that's one thing you've talked about it, because like I never considered going on a cruise, but going on a cruise that is purely a Trek cruise.
Oh, a regular
I feel
cruise
like that's
sounds
so much
boring
better.
as hell. Like maybe for a weekend, but I could not do a week on a cruise ship in the Caribbean. It would be so boring after a couple days.
It would depend on how many books I brought.
Oh yeah, I would read a lot.
I mean, but like to me, I'm like, yeah, I can sit out in the sun and read. That's.
I mean, you still.
I'm Jean-Luc
on
Riza. What can I say? That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
But there's also a themed costume party every night, and
yeah, saw some of your pictures from that.
And the cosplay is always ridiculous. You really wonder how some of these people managed to fit some of these things in their suitcases. like there was one person was a paper mache badgie. Like, how did you get that on the ship?
You make that on the ship. You bring the materials and you make it on the ship. Because otherwise it's just going to get broken, maybe?
Yeah.
Or you wear it onto the ship, maybe? I don't know.
Maybe. Here's my passport. That's not what you look like. My favorite one to see of any of that was, of course, the person who was dressed as Armus. And that wonderful picture. Yeah.
Great picture of them chasing Denise Crosby.
Oh, wow.
One of my favorites was this. I always love the ridiculous mashups. There was one guy dressed who was in a Mugatu costume. Yes. First off, so Mugatu from TOS, but they were dressed as Will Ferrell's character Mugatu from the movie Zoolander, and it was amazing.
I mean, that is fantastic. When I saw a couple pictures of him, but I wanted to have him to have the piano tie.
Oh, yeah.
That was, because I think that would have really just made it like...
So, the really wild thing
was... Still cool.
I swear to God, I'm not making this up.
I believe you.
So the music on the cruise is kind of interesting. It's, so the same company that does the Star Trek cruise also does the 80s cruise. And they do them back to back. They do Star Trek and then 80s. Like, it's the same ship. As we were leaving, they had already taken down the signs and like replaced them with 80s signs. So like there's like the Mario bar and the Etch-a-Sketch thing and all that. Yeah. There you go, Chrissy. You should do back-to-back Star Trek and 80s cruise. There are some people that do that.
If they had a 90s one, I think I'd be.
They actually are doing a 90s one next year.
Oh, gods, no. Okay. Anybody wants to pay me for some writing history work, become a patron history with the Szilagys,
So I'm pretty sure the music is literally the same playlist they play on the 80s cruise, just with Star Trek music added into the mix, because it is mostly just 80s music that they play. But anyway, one of the songs that's in the rotation is the Frankie Goes to Hollywood song "Relax."
Yes.
And I swear to God, I heard it play when I saw the Mugatu, and I just had a sudden urge to kill the Malaysian Prime Minister. It was the weirdest thing.
Good thing you were in the Caribbean then. Nowhere near Malaysia. Oh man, yeah, that always sounds like a lot of fun, and I'm always like,
it's and they have fun events. They have plenty of Trek panels like you would have on a convention, but then the actors also do other things. Like one of the things that I thought was really cool. One night they had what they called Strange New Duets, which was they paired actors from different shows together to do some sort of musical thing.
Interesting.
So, like, Robert Picardo and Doug Jones did Me and My Shadow and stuff like that.
Nice.
Okay, those two doing anything I feel like would be fantastic.
And it was really cool. Armin Shimmerman and David Ajala did a scene from Hamlet.
Oh, wow. What scene? Like, what was going on? Oh, okay.
Sorry, I couldn't, off the top of my head, tell you.
I just, could have been the to be or not to be speech. I didn't know,
No, Armin was playing the evil stepfather, whose name immediately escapes me, but you probably know.
I'm not. Wait,
and he does like a monologue about how it's necessary for him to do evil things, and then Hamlet comes in and they talk for a bit.
Okay.
It was cool. But I don't know enough about Hamlet to immediately tell you what scene it was.
Oh well, if you hadn't been like, it's Act 3, Scene 4, I don't know what that is.
No doubt. No doubts about your memory, Spock.
What were they talking about? Because I am not a Shakespeare scholar by any means.
Yeah. They did not. I did not hear "Angels and Ministers of Grace defend us," which is the only line I could tell you the act in the scene, and that's from Star Trek 4.
Yeah, and The one with Q and Picard from Hide and Q. What a piece of work is man. I don't know what the scene is, though, on that.
Yeah.
Listeners, tell us. Anyway.
But yeah, it was great. They always do a Hollywood Squares or other type of game show, which is always fun.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's one of the highlights that they do every year is Denise Crosby leads a MSTK style overdub of a TOS episode.
Yes.
This year it was Whom Gods Destroy.
Oh,
Good choice.
And, Todd Stashwick was Garth of Izar, and he did a hilarious job.
Yeah, I saw some pictures of Stashwick and Ed Spaliers. They seem to have made a little buddy duo there in some places.
Oh, yeah, that was probably the from the Crusher family comedy era.
Is that what that was?
Which I guess they just added Todd Stashwick because he's good at improv. But it was Gates, Ed, and Will, and they stayed in character as the Crushers.
Oh,
wow.
I love it.
That was great. Another really fun thing, and I'll wrap this up because our listeners don't want to hear me talking about the cruise for an hour. But another fun thing they did was a dramatic script reading of Spock's brain.
Nice.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah.
Stashwick played Kirk, and his over-the-top Shatner impression was a sight to behold.
Nice.
And Will Wheaton was Bones, and his over-the-top DeForest Kelly was also a sight to behold.
Oh, that's awesome. Who was out there saying, brain, what is brain?
His brain. Yeah.
I can't remember her name.
Yeah, sorry, I don't immediately recall
okay.
who. Sorry. But yeah, it was... There's so many things. I did so many things. I had so little sleep, and,
All right. Well, you're just in a good spot to start recording here.
Well, I've been home for a little bit. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, honestly. If you can, shell out the quatloos for it, and it is not cheap, I will readily say that. So I certainly do not judge anyone who does not feel that they should spend that kind of money. I get it. Trust me, I feel like I shouldn't spend that kind of money, and yet I do every year. But
well,
it is my favorite week of the year. It is a fantastic time, and I highly recommend going on it. Next year, we're doing, it's in the last week of February, just like it was this year. It is celebrating Voyager's 30th anniversary. The whole cast of Voyager, minus Robbie McNeil and Jennifer Lean, is signed up to be there. And I think it wouldn't surprise me if they add Robbie later. They're probably just a little gun shy because every time they add Robbie to the cruise, he always bows out to direct something.
I think if they throw a little more money at him, he'll probably not that he's oriented in that way, but I think that might be his calculation of I'm gonna work instead of.
There are plenty of other actors are going to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Melissa Navia is going to be there. I know that'll get Carl's attention.
Well, cool.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll be going to Mexico, the east coast of Mexico, Cozumel, Costa Maya, and then also down to Belize City.
Yeah,
cool.
And for those who don't know, Belize is a port where everyone speaks English because that's the native language of Belize. So that's fun too.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like I could hop off there and get some history too.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing the Mayan pyramids in Mexico.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be cool.
So yeah, absolutely come join us if you can. It is a great time. Also, you'll go to the website, you'll see these huge prices, and they are not cheap. But one thing to know is that if you, rather than spending the thousands of dollars to plunk down, if you don't have the $1,000 to plunk down or don't want to put that on a credit card, they do let you pay monthly, and it's only 5% more money if you do that. So it's not
that's
like
better than a credit card.
Yeah, that's way better than a credit card. So that's better than putting it on your credit card if that's what you're thinking of.
That's not, you know what? I mean, just scrolling through this.
Now, keep in
That's
mind,
not
those
terrible.
prices are per person for a double occupancy room.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
If you are by yourself, you're paying 150% of that.
Okay.
If you're the price for a one person in a double room is 1.5 times what it costs for one person half of two people in a double occupancy room, if that makes sense. Because you're not
2 half people, yes.
Yeah, because you're not because the idea there is that the cruise, you're not spending money on other things on the cruise,
Right.
So they need to charge more for the room.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean,
but if that's if that's an issue for you and you don't know who you want to go with, if you go into the Facebook groups for the cruise, and you can find Trekkies who are looking for roommates. And
yeah.
I can tell you from personal experience, I've been on the cruise 4 years now. I've had 3 different roommates. You don't spend a lot of time in your cabin. Even if you think you're going to spend a lot of time in your cabin, you probably aren't. There's so many other things you can do. And even if you want to spend some time without, talking to people or going to an event, it's also a cruise ship. You can, they've got a spa, they've got the pool, they've got the sun chairs.
Go sit in an empty room.
Yeah, exactly. There are plenty of places that you can go and do whatever you want. I know, for instance, some people will bring their spouse or significant other who does not care about Star Trek, and they'll just have a cruise for the week.
That could be worse.
Yeah.
That could be worse. And that price is like food but no drinks, right? Included?
Yes.
So I mean,
no alcoholic drinks. It does include and no soda, but it does include things like coffee.
Well, I'm sure they'll give you water because they don't.
Yeah,
want
you
to
get water
die.
and coffee for free, and orange juice at breakfast.
But I mean, if you think of it, because I was just looking at it,
and there's iced tea there's iced tea as well, I think.
Dinner, yeah. Well, it's I think it's $21.50. It said for a new. So I mean, that's not for a week, for both staying and your food.
Yeah. Now that is in the smallest room.
Yes, that's the bottom.
That's an interior stateroom, which, in my opinion, is awesome. The best sleep I have ever gotten in my life is in an interior cruise stateroom because it is pitch black when you turn the light off.
Oh.
You wake up, you have no idea what time of day it might be. And so after the first year, I started bringing an alarm clock. But it's very, you get rocked to sleep in complete darkness, and it's great. And again, you're not spending much time in that room. You're sleeping and you're showering. I mean, also, if you want to spend a little money, you can have a balcony if you want. That's also cool.
Yeah.
But you certainly don't need to. There are also, I believe there are also port fees, which you'll see in the small print, which I think is is like $350 or $400 added to that. But that's it. There isn't an additional charge after that. All of the taxes and stuff are already included.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you think about going on a vacation for a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you've sold me on it. If only I had the money.
It's probably also February is probably not the best time for you to take a vacation, right?
If it were a week, 2 weeks later, it would hit spring break. Yeah.
Well,
that's the thing.
But they wouldn't do that because
it's
the
spring
reason
break.
the reason they do it when they do it is because they charter the boat, and you can't. If you were to try to charter a ship during a popular week for cruises, the cost would be ridiculous.
Oh yeah. Well, if I had a semester that was all online, I'd be set.
Yeah. And the other thing I do just want to say for anyone who may not know, because this is something that came up when I talked to a couple of people, this is not, because a lot of times people will do groups and go on a cruise, and what they'll be is it'll be a group of people on the cruise and then a bunch of non-people who aren't in that group.
Right.
That's not how this works. This is entirely, the entire ship is the Star Trek cruise.
That's
one is
one of
there
the
who is
attractive
not
things about it.
paying for the Star Trek cruise. Also, something that may appeal to a lot of people, I know it definitely is a plus in my book, there are no children under the age of 14 allowed on the Star Trek cruise.
Yeah. Deal with that.
Yeah, so it's just, not that there's anything wrong with being a child, obviously. But
I feel like, it depends on the child. I mean, I think about like 10-year-old me on a Star Trek cruise.
oh yeah, no, same.
That would have been fantastic. And I probably wouldn't have been any worse behaved than some of the adults. So
Probably better than some.
yes.
Because
But,
you'd be less drunk.
That's
Yeah.
well, there's that.
We would hope, yeah.
Yeah, one would hope. But anyway.
But going on a cruise without having children running around and yelling and doing the things that children do, which is
Children
perfectly
things.
normal for children, but can be annoying when there's a lot of them around adults. It's nice.
On that note,
Anyway, let's talk about Star Trek.
let's talk about Discovery Season 3. Okay, so this is the Jump to the Future season. I think I've said this on the other 2 episodes. I'm going to caveat, I have no idea what I said about this when it was on. If my opinion has changed, it's just because my opinion have changed. So if somebody is well-versed enough in the podcast to know what I said about these before, great, you've got a great memory, and I don't remember. Other than Unification 3, I remember what I said about that because it was like, that's an important one to me. But yeah, so this is the Jump to the Future. This is the reset, not quite reboot. And yeah, and we'll hit episode by episode here, but let's get an overall impression. What did you think about season 3, Carl?
So I liked season 3 a lot. I the first 2 seasons I liked as well. This is, if I remember right, this is the first time we've had Star Trek competing Star Trek. So Picard had come out in between seasons 2 and 3.
Since what, 90? Whenever DS9 and Voyager, but yeah.
Yeah.
We had also had Lower Decks season 1 at this point.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And actually we get a little bit of cross-pollination from Picard later in the season. This was the first Michelle Paradise run season. It's the first time we've had a showrunner that stuck around the entire run of a season, which is interesting. Weirdly to me, though, this season felt maybe a little more disjointed in some ways than others, where there's a lot of things happening in this season, where we have to. Part of it is because we have to get used to this new reality that we live in and what the future looks like and everything. But we have, the mysteries with the burn. We have things getting set up. Whether we can talk about it as we go through the episodes, whether it happens quickly enough or not. But we get things like the Orions and the Emerald Chain and all that stuff sprinkled throughout. There's all the dynamics with Starfleet. There's the dynamics now with this new character that we meet, Book. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing that it's disjointed. It's just it feels like there's a bunch of little things happening that eventually come together. So in that way, it really does feel more, or not more serialized, but it's serialized in a way that tells a whole bunch of stories that all pay off eventually. I guess they, now that I think about it, they did do that with season 2 a bit with the different, like the May stuff, and then they had these little like 2 or 3 episode chunks of things that they told. But I really enjoyed it. I mean, we can critique, and I certainly will critique some of the decisions they made, particularly around like what the future looks like and how we got to where it is. But I don't know, maybe I'll save it for the first episode, but the first episode actually I have some personal attachments to this first episode that we can talk to when we get to it. But overall, again, it was a wonderful season of Star Trek. And I know Thad and I have debated some of the merits of some of the stories that tell in this, but I certainly enjoyed it very much, and it was a fun one to go back and revisit for this.
Carl and I have a group chat going with a friend of the show, Caleb, and we definitely have both been saying some interesting things in the past week about this episode of the season.
All right. Well, that sounds like Thad. What's your overall on the season?
All right, so I said when we talked about season 1, I said that I think that I like each season of Discovery a little less than the previous one, and that's still holding true here. Not to say this is a bad season. I just like season 1 and 2 more. This season really, what really takes me out of this season and makes it not quite as good for me as some of the others is I have strong feelings about the big reveal at the end, and I just don't like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy a lot of things in this season. Admiral Vance is fantastic. Yes. I like a lot of what we see. Unification 3, I love the whole thing about the Romulans and Vulcans unifying there. I loved Terra Firma, where we see that Georgiou's time in the Prime Universe has actually changed her, and I like that a lot. There's some really cool stuff that happens in the season, and I enjoy it a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I would say the same. Yeah, there's some. I see what you're saying about, like, there's some disjointed parts. I feel like that's maybe just kind of true to life. Life is sometimes disjointed, so maybe I'm not as. I didn't really pick up on that in the same way, but it's tough rewatching it, as I've said with the other two. Knowing where it's going. Yeah, it's hard to put myself back to what I thought at the time, or what I thought without knowing. So.
I was trying to put myself in a mindset of not knowing what happens in season 4 when watching this season.
Yeah. And my problem was I kept thinking of things that happened, and I was like, wait, was this season or was that season 4? Right. And so that, So let's start with episode 1. That Hope Is You, part 1. And all the discussion around, where's part 2? I remember that.
Oh, yeah, that was the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, obviously it's going to be somewhere. Calm down. Michael arrives in 3188, runs into Book, literally, and Grudge, finds out about the burn, and we're off running. Carl, you said you had some particular thoughts about this episode.
Yeah, I mean, just from a personal standpoint first. So this episode came out in October 2022, or 2020. Which was right smack dab in the middle of the pandemic. I know I had spent a ton of time at home, seeing very few people in person, going out for walks and things like that. But other than that, there really wasn't any, let's go hang out and watch some Star Trek kind of thing going on. And Thad and I had been chatting by texts and recording our podcast sort of as a way of just keeping connections with people and staying sane, really. I don't, we neither of us really cared, is anyone going to listen to this or not? It was just something that we could do and a way to spend the time.
I don't think we even published an episode until
we hadn't yet. No.
Nice.
But it's a long way of saying that both of us kind of, when this episode came out, neither of us watched it immediately, because we had arranged that I was going to go up to Thad's house and we were going to hang out for a day, and it was like the first time I don't know about Thad, it was the first time I had actually gone and seen somebody who wasn't an immediate member of my family in a long time. And so we hung out, and one of the things we did was we watched this episode.
Oh, cool.
So it was a very nice day just to spend with somebody, and something that I hadn't had a chance to do in a long time. Or it felt way longer than it actually had been. Yeah. So the episode itself, I think it's a really interesting way to kick off a season, and to extend this to the second episode. I kind of like what I sometimes call the Two Towers approach, where we're going to tell the story of one set of people and then tell the story of a second set of people, and we have no idea when they're happening or what's going on, because we don't know where they fit together, and we don't know what's impacting what until the very end of the second episode. And seeing Michael Burnham being the only real person that we know in this episode, I'm a big fan of Sonuka Martin Green and her acting. I think she gets to do a lot more in this episode than she'd been given a chance to do in the show so far. That moment when she lands and realizes where she is and that everyone's alive, that yell or cheer or whatever you want to call it that she gives, I don't think I'd ever seen her that happy before in the entire show. And of course, the moment when she gets drugged or whatever and she's high,
that's so good.
It's so much fun seeing her get to do all these things that we hadn't really seen before. David Ajala is fantastic. I really liked his character of Book. Let's see what else. I like this mystery they set up with the Federation. We see Sahil at the very beginning with his cool his little bird alarm clock that he has, and these things like these chairs that appear out of nowhere and disappear, and the bed that dematerializes and stuff, and we see him just trying to hope that somebody's out there, so we don't really know what's going on. It's a great setup, and it, while I'm a little tired in general of these puzzle box seasons, I think this one sets up a really interesting question from the get-go. I have a few little quibbles about things like the transworm attack and stuff, which I think is a little on the silly side, but it is in keeping with the Kurtzman era of Trek, where you have these weird monsters that come out and eat people every once in a while. But other than that, it's a great kickoff to the season, and I think sets a high bar, I think, for the episodes to follow.
It does, yeah. Thad?
I mean, what Carl said, on a personal note, I mean, I had seen occasionally a few people at other things before that, but it had been a couple months since someone other than me and my cat had been in my house when Carl showed up at my door, and then we watched Star Trek, and that was great. That was a good weekend. And this episode was fantastic. I remember watching it and really feeling a little disappointed that this was the premiere, just because where it is that Two Towers approach. We knew nothing about our crew, about most of the cast in this episode, and I remember feeling a little disappointed about that. I almost feel I'm of a couple minds on this. One, I partly wish that we had actually had more time before they met up, but we had interspersed some more. I wouldn't have minded seeing more of Burnham's journey between this episode and the next episode. But at the same time, I also kind of wish, since they did it in 2 episodes, that we should have gotten both of those episodes as the premiere.
At the same time, yeah.
Kind of like they're doing this season.
Yeah, kind of like they're doing with season 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see why once we see those two, if it is all interconnected.
I wonder if they'd reversed the order of them, if that would have made any difference.
Oh, okay.
Where the first episode is the ship crashing on the ice planet, and we don't know what happened to Michael.
Oh, yeah, that could have been interesting. And then, the next episode is us seeing what happened to Michael. Yeah, I like that, actually.
And then you find out later that she actually arrived a year earlier than them. And you'd have to kind of rejigger.
Well, no, even finding out that she arrived a year earlier at the end of that episode, and then we just know the next episode takes place a year before.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that would have.
Well, next time I watch these, I think I'm going to do that. See how it feels. You get there was the novel that covered that period, which I really liked. Yes, Wonderland. Which at the moment, the only thing I can remember out of it is that she runs into Starfleet reenactors and they have things all messed up, which I loved that.
That's the part that I strongly remember too. I remember there was a whole thing where she has to join all the couriers together to fight someone, but I don't remember what. Other than what happened.
I don't know. That was a good scene. Yeah, I liked this episode. I mean, it was a strong start. I agree. It probably should have been, we should have gotten episode 2 at the same time. But that's streaming for you. They don't have to make it like a special 2-hour Saturday night event to get people in front of the television for the expensive ads.
Yeah, and maybe
unfortunate.
A lot of networks, streaming networks, if network is even the right word to use there, are doing the 2 or 3 episode season premieres these days. Like it's pretty common. Like I know Apple always does two episodes. I think actually sometimes 3 for their new series. Amazon usually does 2 episodes for new seasons. I think it's a very good thing to do just because we as a society are used to binging things now.
Yeah.
And to get into a show, you often need more than 1 episode.
Yeah.
So I like the Discovery's starting this season with 2 episodes. I hope that sort of thing will continue with the new Star Trek series. Because we got 2 episodes of Lower Decks.
Yes, we did.
That's right.
Well.
Yeah, I think that is what's replacing giving it the time slot between 2 really popular shows.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Instead of airing first episode between Friends and Seinfeld, you get 2 episodes dropped.
Or dropping right after the Super Bowl.
Right.
Okay, see, that one I've never understood because the Super Bowl's over at 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock, people are leaving your house because you're having a party or you're leaving a party. No, I'm not watching anything at that point, but that's me.
Well, I think
that's East Coast too, I'm thinking.
What happens with that, because I don't know, because the last time I watched broadcast television has been a while, but the Super Bowl at least used to always air on Fox. I don't know if it still does. Maybe it's CBS now?
They rotated
No, it
around
was
the
CBS
different
this time
networks.
around.
Oh, that's right. It was, but I remember when it was on Fox back when I was in high school. They would usually do an episode of one of their animated comedies after. So that's only a half hour, and also the target demographic is not going to bed at 10:30. So yeah. No, there was an episode of Friends that was after the Super Bowl. It's actually called the one after the Super Bowl, and that's the only thing I remember. That's the only time I remember staying up for something like that. So man, I rewatched not all of Friends, but quite a bit of Friends a couple years ago, and oh boy, has it not aged well.
In places, in other places, it's all right.
Yeah, but it's really homophobic.
Yes, particularly around Chandler's family.
Yeah.
Chandler's father. Yeah, and yet it's almost ahead of its time in how Ross and Carol are trying to deal with that situation with her and her wife and the baby and everything. So, of course, that's, lesbians have never really been a problem in history because men think it's cute. So, or sexy
hot.
Or whatever. Yeah. It's the lack of. Anyway, I don't get into that. We'll be here for another hour while I get up on a soapbox. And it has nothing to do with this. Yeah, so I like that they drop a few episodes at a time, but I'm glad it's not all of it in one hit. Mostly just because of podcasting. So.
Well, Netflix is probably going to do that to you, so.
Well, but at least that's the half hour.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not gonna be quite as heavy, I think. All right, well, Far From Home. Already started talking about this. This Discovery gets to 3189. They land on this planet with, how did they call the ice? It was
parasitic ice.
Thank you. That's the word I lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they get found by Burnham. And they deal with a real jerk of a guy who I always can't remember his name, but the one who comes back in the last episode because Tilly didn't kill him.
Yep. Yeah, I have things to say about that, but
go ahead.
No. I mean, I think he's great in this episode.
Oh, he is. Yeah, he's a
Zara.
great actor. The character is
Jake Weber. Jake Weber.
Mm-hmm.
Jake Weber plays him in this really nice, this really sinister but understated for the most part way. And I think he's a great foil. The way he talks to Tilly in particular. I'm a sucker for Western in space anything. So the whole like weird saloon out in the middle of nowhere really hooked me on this one. We get to see Michelle Yeoh kick some butt, which is great. At one point.
love that.
I like when they use her for more than just the person sitting in the corner saying snarky things because it's cute.
Yeah.
She does say some really good snarky things, though.
In this episode,
Oh, gods, yeah.
she does for sure. Yeah.
In between kicking ass, so it's like
Yeah,
you get best of
yeah.
both.
I like how it sets up and then pays off the idea that this is hard on everybody, and there, Emily Coots gets to do some really good acting in this, where she is injured and gets sent to sick bay, and then you don't have a concussion, you're fine, and she's like, wait, what? And she kind of like is in a daze and is like staggers out and everything because they're triaging at this point.
Yeah.
And that carries through the next few episodes, and I think it's really, I'm glad that they addressed that. Yeah, leaving your entire family behind and everyone you know and love and going off to the future is not just, well, that was a thing that happened and we're gonna just carry on our way.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they spend the time to address that. My thing about Zara is I think it was a mistake to bring him back. I think it would have been great if he had just been some random, jerk guy that they ran into on this planet. The whole concept is that there's not enough dilithium around, so travel is hard, yet somehow he's going to end up with everybody else out of nowhere with the Emerald Chain later, I think. Just kind of shrinks the world and maybe undermines some of the story they're trying to tell a little bit. I'm not upset that he's there, and I think he gets some interesting scenes, except the turbolift scene's dumb. But and he gets to do his menacing thing again. But
Yeah.
I think it would have been better if he hadn't returned and they'd just been a one-off kind of thing. I think it would have served the story a little bit better.
I really like the actor though, so I'm
I do too.
Mostly
Yeah.
okay with him returning just because I like him. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
Parasitic ice that's going to keep the Discovery from leaving the planet, only giving somebody a frostbitten hand, seems a bit off. But that's the thing that bothered me the most about that. So,
also, if the parasitic ice, because they talk about how the parasitic ice takes over everything at night, which by extension means that it retreats in the day. So,
yeah, that's true.
Surely they could have just heated the Discovery.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's why the tractor beam was so useful. Maybe tractor beam's kind of warm, relatively speaking.
Yeah, maybe.
Or maybe they needed to just go set fires on the hull, just like lots of. Yeah. Okay.
Send the dots out with blowtorches or something.
What do they have?
It just
them
made me think of. Do you ever see the video game ads for those Lost in the Snow video game, and you got to get the guy going around the circle. He's got to collect all the little pieces of wood, and then all of a sudden it's a bigger area. That's what I was just imagining that on the Discovery's hull.
I mean, I assume they already have the dots. Maybe not, but because they have. We definitely saw them on the Enterprise.
Yeah, dots are.
That's true.
At the end of last season.
That's true. They do have them.
Yeah.
As a concept, the new ones, the new design, but.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anything you want to add about Far From Home, Thad?
I liked the scene where Saru and Tilly are walking, and Tilly apologizes for talking because she's scared, and he tells her to keep talking.
Yeah.
I love Saru's arc in this because he went from being scared Kelpian, my species is defined by knowing that death is coming, to very abruptly finding out that that's not actually who he is, and then that's it. So then, and this is him dealing with it, and really being able to embrace it in such a way over the course of the season. I just love it. Yeah.
I mean, he questions some of his choices throughout, but I like how the confidence he's projecting. Like, remember back in season 1 when he was put in charge and he had the computer, like, keep track of everything I'm doing and give me a list of all these captains I should emulate and all this stuff. And now he's way, and obviously, the Vahari thing has a lot to do with that. But at the same time, it's nice to see him, as you said, just completely change his way he projects himself.
There's a message in that about recognizing malfunctioning chemicals in your brain. I think I feel like as somebody who is appreciative of the effectiveness of things like Prozac, I'm appreciative.
If you can't make your own neurotransmitters, store-bought is fine.
Yup, exactly. All right, well, we go from there. We have our crew reunited, plus Book, who really doesn't know what to do with himself. Burnham doesn't know what to do with herself, but we'll get to that. And then we go to Earth, which has gone, not to get modern political, but it's definitely an Earth first attitude that we have going here. What are we thinking about people of Earth?
So I remember when watching this episode for the first time, I was starting to wonder whether every episode was going to have a guest star who had been on Hell on Wheels until eventually Ensign Mount came back.
I didn't think about that.
Because in Far From Home, we have, and I don't recall the actor's name, but we have...
The Swede. That's right.
Yeah. Well, no, in this episode, we have the Swede.
Yes, sorry.
People from Earth, we had, that's, I also... And he's been in so many things. He was in Stargate Atlantis. So he was in a bunch of, and I don't recall his name. But I also don't recall the actor's name from the previous one, who played Zara. He was. Oh yeah. He was also on Hell on Wheels. That's why I was thinking this. I will say, People of Earth. It's a good episode. I will say, and part of this is just me being tired coming home from the cruise, but this is the only episode that of all 13 that I fell asleep while watching.
That's reasonable.
Thad randomly in that text chain that he mentioned before, Thad text to Caleb and me that it's like, I just fell asleep during a Jonathan Frakes episode, and we all took turns trying to guess which one it was, and none of us got it. Because we said you could just say it was Sub Rosa and we won't judge you.
So
yeah, that's true. There are 3.
I like the whole thing. I like the commentary of the isolationism and how they realize that it hurt them, which is, I think, a message that's needed right now. I'll just say that. The tree bothered me. The tree really bothered me. It shouldn't still be alive. I know trees.
None of the other trees there are that big.
That's fine, but unless there's some reason that this tree was specially cared for. Yeah. It's not a sequoia. It didn't look like a sequoia to me. I think they said it was an elm tree or an oak tree or something like that. It just took me out of it.
That bugged me because that tree was enormous and clearly ancient, and all of the other trees were like normal tree size.
Yeah.
Like what made this tree live and none of the others did?
And you tell it's San Francisco, 930 years. You have earthquakes, you have all sorts of other potential natural disasters that happen. And I understand it's, they have the technology, they know when it's coming, or I think in Next Gen, they say they can stop earthquakes and when they know they're coming in San Francisco or something, but it just, And I get that it was supposed to be like a hopeful connection, and Tilly was all excited about it, and they had all spent time at that place without knowing each other and all of that kind of stuff. But I just no.
I mean,
no.
If they just wanted something that was still there from when they were there, they could have just shown them on the Golden Gate Bridge. I mean,
yeah, or a building even.
Yeah,
it's like you could have the this was the original Starfleet headquarters Commons building or whatever, wherever they had the cafeteria. So,
yeah.
And then they could have
What
made a
trees?
joke about some of this food being still there from then.
Oh my god, that would have been perfect. Yeah, because I mean, I understand like a building being kept up, but maybe maybe. Well, the buildings were kept up too. It looked like there were buildings around.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to the isolationism thing, because that really annoyed me, I think, the first time I watched this, because it's not the direction I wanted to see things going, where we get to the future and the future sucks. Like,
we're not used to that as Trek fans.
No, we're not. Well, no, but it's also, the dystopian future that's become kind of cliched in modern current science fiction a lot of the times. And I was hoping that it was going to go in a different way. The thing that I grew to appreciate, especially as watching, was realizing that yes, there is isolationism happening here, but and again, I also was like, well, this is very familiar watching it in 2020. But it's a very different thing because they're doing it out of fear. They're not doing it because they're corrupt and they're just trying to keep people away because we don't like change. They were worried about being attacked, and they were worried about, because they had been to the point where the Federation was like, we need to leave because we're a target and we have to go exist somewhere else so that Earth is safe. It's not any better. It certainly is a bad situation that they put themselves in. I almost wish this had been a 2-episode story. I really like the stuff with Wen and the idea of these are your own people that are they went out somewhere and they're on I think it was Titan, the moon, and they had a problem and they came for help, and you attacked them because you're afraid of everything now. And Giorgio's great moment where she's like, diplomacy is too slow, and she rips the guy's helmet off and like, look who this person is, come on. Which another great Giorgio moment. I would have liked to see that story get a little more breathing room around, because we have a lot to cover in this with getting back to Earth, and isn't it great to see Earth again, and all that stuff on top of everything. So either make this a slightly longer episode, or because they've finally embraced and they did in season 2 too, though we can do longer running times because we don't have commercials and obligations and to other schedules and things like that. So I just, that's the only thing that I wish we had a little bit more meat on the whole Raider attack bones than we got. But again, a 3 in a row that I think these are quite excellent episodes.
This is when we have Adira join. Senatal, the Trill Admiral who sends out the message. I have to wonder, I know we've kind of established Trill have about the same lifespan as humans, but I wonder, if he's just, because when you see how old he appears to be, if he was there pre-burn, if he had just gotten to Earth before the burn hit or something, I don't know, that's information we'll never have. Right, so we have Adira, and so that means that we have to go to Trill so that she can connect with the former hosts and actually access their memories and figure out where Starfleet was. And we have a little more isolationism here, which is interesting. What do we think about Forget-Me-Not? I like the caves. I like that we got to see the caves again.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
That was good. So, at the risk of...
Look on your face.
What? Mine? What did I do?
Yeah. No, you look like you're about to say something really unpleasant. You don't want to.
Every time I criticize the overall themes of Discovery, people come out of the woodwork to talk about how, I'm sticking a knife in Gene Roddenberry or something. But
I thought Discovery's existence was sticking a knife in Gene Roddenberry.
Well, there's those people too.
Yeah.
I don't like that Michael Burnham is the answer to everything, and I don't like that the only way that Adira was able to reconcile with their symbiont was for Michael to go into the pool and join them.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm fine with Adira getting help.
Yes.
And needing
oh, yeah,
help.
But it could have been Culber.
The scene that,
It
and
should have been Culber.
I absolutely, yeah, the scene that really ticks me off, and it really did this time out, because I'm with you on some of these things about Michael and being the answer to everything. When Culber goes to Michael and says, "Actually, you really should go and not me," I'm like, "Come on,
That makes no sense."
I mean, and I will say, I give the writers credit, because Michaels was like, "Well, you have some experience with these kind of situations too. Like you died and came back," and to have him, the opening sequence of this episode. I mean, one, I love Jeff Russo's music in this like voiceover log that Culber is recording. Mm-hmm. He's essentially becoming the crew's counselor to get them through the trauma they've gone through. And the first time that somebody says, hey, counselor person, we need you to go counsel this Adira person on their journey back to Trill, he says, nah, I don't think I'm the right person to do this, and goes to Michael. Yeah. I mean, I do like when Hugh calls her a responsibility hoarder. That is very true.
But he's helping that.
Yeah, well, he is. I like this episode for the most part. The thing that Thad brought up is really one of the ones that bugs me.
Yeah, that's really the only big thing that I don't like about this episode. Yeah,
I mean, so a question for you, because I remember thinking this in the moment. There are many times in this, it felt like, especially in this episode, where people like Stamets and others refer to Adira as she or her.
Yes.
And in the time of watching this, I think when it came out, it was right around the time we were getting the interviews with Blue DeBarrio and about how they were being accommodated by the showrunners and everything, and changing the character to, I don't know if Adira was originally written as non-binary, but they had that aspect to it, and Blue was talking all about their own personal journey and how they came to realize their own situation through filming the episode, if I remember, or the season, if I remember right. And every time somebody said she or her, it felt weird to me. And I don't know if that's just because of the contemporaneousness of all those interviews and all the talk about how we have a non-binary character on the show, and then all of a sudden we're going to gender them differently.
I remember that. Also, I remember before the season even came out, they had announced that there was a non-binary character, and that they would be played by Blue DeBarrio. So, story-wise, it makes a certain amount of sense.
No, it does. Absolutely does.
Adira has no memories from before the Trill implantation. That's a plot point. So they don't remember that they had already gone through the gender identity.
Yep.
But what I recall about this is, because the show made no direct reference to it at all until a couple episodes later, there was so much arguing on Twitter about this. To the point that some people would get mad if people referred to Adira as she, her, when at this point in the show she had only been referred to as she, her. I remember, I very clearly remember that was a whole thing.
Yes, and one thing that did bother me is when they finally do correct Stamets, when we get to the point where we have that understanding as the audience, it feels like Adira is chastising him because he forgot. It feels like the way they say it. It's just like,
I didn't get that.
No, I didn't.
I mean, and maybe I'm reading into it too much. It just felt like maybe it's the way it's said, where it's very abrupt, and then there's the explanation.
I mean, I don't know. I read that differently. I read that as Adira is struggling with should I bring this up?
Yeah.
I've been feeling that this is
Oh yeah. Okay.
your way of referring to me to other people is making me uncomfortable, and maybe it had been for a while, and they hadn't figured out like, what is this, and then Adira finally says, I would prefer this way. And the thing I really like is how Culber's just like, okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's all that's said about it.
Yeah.
And
that was good.
I liked that when they admit that they had never talked about this to anyone other than Gray before.
Yeah.
So like you get the sense that they view Stamets as someone that they can trust, and I liked that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's just really good acting, that it felt like, because if you think about it, if it's something that you're kind of mulling over in your head, by the time it actually comes out of your mouth, it often is much more abrupt, especially something that important. So yeah, I remember all the kerfuffle too. But
plus, there was a whole thing on Memory Alpha because one of the admins of Memory Alpha has a long history of bullshit like that. So yes.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I have had issues with that in writing some history about non-binary and transgender people. At what do you? There's the question of, if you're talking about this person's childhood, at which point they were not yet transitioned or they had not yet understood themselves to be non-binary. They is a good one because you can just use it across the board. But, how do you refer? And it's I think it's something we haven't really figured out yet in terms of at least historical
and it gets
work,
complicated.
Like,
current, like, how do you refer to Elliot Page when he was playing female roles in the past?
Well, I mean, the role is the role.
The role is the role, but like, is it incumbent on, like, just like Christopher Nolan to go back to change the credits in his film? Like, should you change the credit to somebody when in that sort of situation? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, should the credit read Elliot Page? No,
I would say generally no, because they don't do that for other changes.
Yeah.
Right. True.
Yeah, they don't,
if they do a new fancy
versus...
new remastered version of Inception, then maybe, but
they do that. Well, like on IMDb, if somebody used a different name, they just put a little parenthetical. I think that's the best way to deal with that in that case, but we digress anyway.
I know I'm certainly not qualified to really speak too much to this issue, so I'm just kind of
me either.
I do have a question going back to the story of the episode about so the whole idea is that Gray and Adira were on a ship, and Gray had just received the tall symbiont, I believe, or very recently. Shouldn't the Trill have known what was going on? I mean, they have this line about how there's not enough hosts for the symbionts anymore, which I guess we've forgotten about, or we've ignored, or they've done something about the whole idea that there are way more compatible hosts than we talk about.
Yeah, DS9, they had literally the opposite problem.
Had the opposite problem where there's so many people out there that could be hosts, and we don't have enough symbionts.
Yeah, but we don't know, because I thought about that too. Sorry, I didn't mean to, but 900 years down the line, 800 years down the line, we don't know what the genetics of that were. We don't know, maybe those people also happen to be less fertile than other people, who couldn't. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors there.
Yeah.
And here's my problem for not rewatching all of DS9 before doing this episode. But
yeah, why didn't you?
How dare you?
I'm having a little bit of trouble being sure if this was ever mentioned on the show, or if I'm getting this from the DS9 novel Revenant that came out a few years ago.
Okay.
But I seem to recall it being a plot point that it turns out that actually all Trill can do hosts, can biologically host a symbiont.
I feel like that might have been Revenant.
But that may have
Yeah,
only
that's
been
not
Revenant.
familiar
I'm
to me.
not
I
sure.
haven't read it, so.
But that's a matter of degree, isn't it? Because on
Yeah.
DS9 it was 70%
Yeah.
of the people or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was a whole thing that was a conspiracy that they were they were pretending that it was fewer to yeah. They were,
So they wouldn't
keep riots
become
down
commodities.
almost.
yeah.
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 But I mean, but my point here is that one, I would have thought that the Trill, whoever is in charge of managing who's joined with whom, would have known about Gray, and would have, because Gray has been chosen to receive a symbiont at some point. I would imagine as part of their homework, they would have realized that Gray is in a relationship with this person, Adira, and that they at least exist. So what I'm confused about how Adira is a complete unknown to the Trill.
I think Adira says they were on a generational ship.
Were they?
That
would make
I
sense
get the-
given that it's post-burn, but
I get the impression that
But if
Gray
that's the case,
was
how
not.
did Vance know Senatol?
We don't know Vance's
Yeah.
background. Do we? How far is Federation headquarters from Earth at this point? At warp, I don't know.
I don't know if they
I don't
ever
know.
tell us.
I don't think they do. I seem to remember that Adira says generational ship, but even if not, I don't think you need. If Senatol and Gray are the only Trill on the ship,
Yeah.
then there's not a question of has he been prepared? Has he gone through the process? Does the institute, whatever their name is, even know about him?
I think
So
the
I mean, not
burn
just to give you an
changes a
internal
lot.
question. Yeah.
it could.
In the 24th century, yes, they absolutely would have worked with the Trill to make sure they had a proper host, although there were situations such as Ezri Dax where
Ezri,
it's just
yeah.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but obviously they knew about her and she went back to Trill to but in the case of the burn, because they specifically say it had been a very long time since anyone from the Federation had been to Trill. So when it is incredibly costly to travel anywhere, even if you can at all, I think things just work differently. The Trill diaspora, as it were, would have adapted to this and just among themselves do the transplants rather than having any communication with the home world.
That's a point too that may point to the issue of too many symbionts and not enough hosts. Because if the symbionts tend to the symbionts are looking for new experiences, so maybe they tend to be a little more explorational, and so you end up with more of the people who are capable of hosting who are off-world when the burn happens. But then the symbionts are still reproducing as much as they normally do, which I don't know how much they normally do.
We don't know anything about that, really.
Yeah.
I don't think.
But speaking of hosts, we see 5 hosts. We hear the names of 6, so I don't know what happened to the 6th one. But that beside the point. One of those hosts is wearing a Picard Season 1 uniform.
Yep.
I didn't catch that. Oh, your uniform eye. I love it.
Which is a nice little touch, because obviously Picard Season 1 and Discovery Season 3 would have been produced around the same time.
We need a costume. Go across the lot.
Yeah, but what bugs me about this is Picard Season 1 takes place 800 years before this. There should be more than 6 hosts between Picard Season 1 and Discovery Season 3.
Well,
Yeah. I mean,
we don't know how many years Trill lived.
We don't for sure, but if we look at our most well-known Dax.
Yeah. It's 7 over 300 and some odd years.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of them died of non-natural causes. So, yeah. And one of them was
A murderer.
a murderer.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
beyond that, even then, we're still looking at looking at a much smaller number than over 100 years per person.
Yeah. But at the same time, how long is Curzon alive? If Curzon is at the Khitomer Accords as an ambassador, or the Khitomer Conference, and he's still, like, alive and functional enough to be mentoring Ben Sisko while he's at the Academy.
All we know for sure on Curzon is that he was at least 100.
Okay.
He was born before 2267. We don't know for sure when. And he died in 2367.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that Curzon's lifestyle would shorten his natural life more than some other people.
Tell that to Mick Jagger.
Well, that's true.
Oh, yeah.
A good point.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe by 900 years from now, we have Trill who decide that they don't want to be remembered by their hosts. Yeah, or the hosts that don't want to be remembered by the symbiont. Or
And it's possible that Tau was sitting in a vat for a while, too.
True. Good point.
We do see a couple of them floating around in the caves, swimming around in there, so...
Maybe that guy was one of the cosplayers.
One of the Talls was a historical reenactor.
And it's also possible that they decided to reuse that uniform at one point.
Well, look how long the Monster Maroons hung around.
Right.
Well, they only wore them for like one season, so it makes sense.
Well, we don't know how long before that season they wore them.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, we know there's a finite thing because 10 years before it was
they
a
have
different uniform.
the other one, yeah.
Yeah, but also I'm thinking later in the season when we see the holograms on Su'Kal's ship, which does have a name but I've forgotten. We see a uniform that was from right before the burn, and they were using the TNG era com badge on it.
Well,
so that's what I'm saying. They reuse things.
They recycle things. Yeah. It's like fashion. The 90s are back in. And...
So it's possible that it's possible that Picard season 1 uniform is actually from 2720 or something.
Could be.
Yeah. It's retro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when we
I love your eye for that, though.
At this point, we've seen so many uniforms they use at the same time as other uniforms. Who knows? It's possible that there were a couple ships that were still using that Picard Season 1 uniform for 100 years or something.
Well, the Discovery crew certainly holds onto their uniforms for a while.
That's
true. It's weird that they just changed the com badge, right? Isn't that weird?
I think that's intentional on Vance's part. I think once they say they don't want to... Once there's a stink put up about splitting them up, then he wants to make sure that everybody knows who they are. Because he doesn't necessarily trust them yet, and keeping them in a different uniform makes them easily identifiable.
Okay.
I'll go with that.
Yeah, so then we go to the Seed Vault because of some people that are getting very public medical treatment on Federation headquarters.
Yeah.
Because there is no concept of privacy in Starfleet for medical treatment.
Well, is it at the end of which episode is it? There's a scene when I think it's the last episode, the previous one, the Forget Me Not, when Detmer goes to finally go to Culber and say, "Hey, I want to have a chat." She just walks into sickbay while he's examining a patient, and then he just stops what he's doing to go talk to her. I'm like, this is not how I want my doctors to work, but okay.
No.
Anyway.
No. But maybe in a time and place where there is considerably less disease, and you're mostly going to the doctor because you need a checkup or a vaccination or something, then
Maybe.
I don't know. I thought this was an interesting... I really liked the idea of the Seed Vault I liked the idea of the continuity of the ship. I assumed it wasn't the same ship, even though it had the same name.
No, it has a J registry number, I think. So it's
Oh, that's right. Okay.
it's another descendant of that ship. I do like the idea that they have one though.
Yeah.
It's a cool idea.
And the Barzan and the whole thing about,
Mm-hmm.
you know, are they part of the Federation? Those little tidbits that we get along the line, I love those.
So I'm gonna pile on to Thad's comment from earlier, maybe a little bit. First of all, we meet Admiral Vance in this episode, who Oded Fair is fantastic.
Oh, so great.
He's so good. The thing that gets me is I was convinced, because I've watched Star Trek for 45 years almost, that he or especially his assistant in this episode was going to turn out to be a traitor of some kind. Badmiral. And they play into that a little bit because of the scene where he wants to break up the crew and he doesn't go along with what they're telling him and all this stuff. And I'm just going to be on the record and say nothing he does in any of these scenes is wrong. He is doing the right thing for his situation. The only reason people get upset about it, and that we are expected to get upset about it, is because our crew, quote unquote, is the one being affected by it. And
yes.
And here's another example.
Just like Admiral Nechayev.
Exactly like Admiral Nechayev, or to cross the streams with our franchises, Admiral Holdo from The Last Jedi. None of these people in command they're responsible for everybody. They have to do what's best for. He has to do what's best for the Federation, and what he's doing is absolutely what's best for the Federation. Like, why should he trust this random ship that showed up and claims to be from the past and all this stuff? And then do whatever they are, what he's being told he should do because Michael Burnham says he should do it. It's, I don't know. It all works out in the end, but I don't know. I just want to say I love the character, and I love that again, he's doing the right thing. He's an admiral who does the right thing and is a very good individual. And I loved watching him progress through the whole season as well.
Yeah, just like Shaw was doing the right thing. And the rash of shit that I got online when I said, oh, well, our Picard and Riker are being badmirals. Oh, my God. But put yourself in the other side of that. So, yeah.
Also applies for in season 1 with Admiral...
Sheer fucking hubris.
Yeah, what was her name?
Oh,
yeah.
I don't remember.
Clancy.
Her name is Admiral Sheer fucking hubris.
Admiral Sheer fucking hubris. Admiral Clancy.
Clancy,
It's SFH for short, yes. Clancy. Yeah. This is this is a good point, because I forget, when you watch it all together, you forget how long it is before you run into these people. Like, I totally forgot that we didn't even see Osira until
episode 8.
The 8th episode.
Yeah.
So
I have notes on that too.
Well, let's go to that then. Anything else about Die Trying we want to?
Oh, we meet David Cronenberg too.
Yeah, that's right. He's so good.
And we get one of my favorite. I'm just all over the place. We get one of my favorite Tig Notaro lines, who never gets enough to do in these stories. But there, she says to Stamets, "Can we just irradiate your entire personality?" Which I get tired of snarky Giorgio, but I could take snarky Jet Reno.
I loved
all the time.
the montage of interviews with all the people.
Yes.
I thought that was really good.
Yes,
I really enjoyed Culber's. He's like, when he talks about all the things, he's like, "But my murderer and I are good now."
I mean, he's been dead for 900 years, but it's fine, 800 years, whatever.
But Cronenberg as Kovic is fantastic. And I remember reading an interview with him that apparently, like, the reason he's there is just because lived in Toronto, so somebody was just like, "Hey, do you want to be on Star Trek?" He said, "Sure."
Yeah. Like they wrote the perfect role for him,
else.
and then they somehow got him to be on the show. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, he's good, and Giorgio blinking the holograms into
I love
fritzing
that.
out.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
And Reno just asking for snacks.
And then the next
And then
cut, she's eating
getting them?
nachos.
Yeah, and then she's asked. She needs a drink to go with her nachos.
Yep.
Yes.
I think seeing the drink would have been one step too far, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
they had the right amount of restraint on that one.
I like the licorice later though. This isn't candy. It's food. This isn't
It's
food.
not food,
it's
it's candy.
Technically an accessory.
Yeah.
Which
Maybe
I
think
agree
of
with
Lower
100%.
Decks.
I agree with her, but I would never use black licorice as my candy accessory.
Well, maybe it was grape.
No, I think it's black. She
black.
refers to it as
She's a
black
black licorice person.
In season 4,
She
she
is
actually
black
refers
licorice.
to it as black licorice.
That's true.
You know what's I'm sitting here and I have a baggie of black licorice jelly beans.
Oh,
Nice.
I like black licorice jelly beans. I love like straight up black licorice is too much, but the jelly
nah.
beans have enough sweet to them. I wait for them
can't.
every year at Easter. Yep.
The
Anyway.
closest I'll do is an absinthe cocktail.
Yeah. Okay.
Doesn't take
That's
much,
cool.
but
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and even then, like, don't put a lot in.
yeah.
To each their own. Yeah. So that brings us to Scavengers. When for a moment we think that Grudge is slightly sentient because she brought the ship back.
I love when Tilly's like, "Where's Michael? Did you eat her?"
I have the book. They released that little book of Grudges.
Oh, the Book of Grudge, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And every once in a while, I just flip through it. And I always in the book it says something like, "I really appreciate that Tilly thought that I actually could eat Michael Burnham."
That was Rob Perlman wrote that, I think.
That sounds right.
Yeah, he was actually on the cruise this year. He's the
Cool.
He's like the cruise's resident author. He's usually on the cruise, and he does like book club meetings. This year we had one with for the High Country by John Jackson Miller, which was fun.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah, so Burnham goes rogue. Knowingly disobeys orders. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna bitch about this.
Go for it.
It's a constant theme in Discovery that Michael Burnham believes that she is right and her superiors are wrong, and she's just going to go off and do her thing.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they pay lip service to her getting dressed down for it. And yes, I even count her going to jail because she was out in the next episode. But it always ends up being correct for the story. And it really, really bothers me.
Yes. Because story.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You know, that's...
And we come back to the fact that everything revolves around Michael Burnham, and she's the most important person in the universe, and it's annoying.
The only episode where that actually makes sense, other than the ones around her jumping to the future, is Unification. That it makes sense.
Yeah, that one it actually does make sense. Yes,
but the rest of them, no.
And I made a comment to Thad and Caleb a little while ago that we kind of talked about it a long time for a bit, but you know, she's gone through a lot of stuff and she's had a lot of traumatic experiences in her life. She's also, to your point, Thad, she's led a remarkably consequence-free life.
Yes,
where she has these really rough things happen to her, but they don't actually mean anything at the end of the day, it seems like. Where, and you know, spoilers for season 4, she makes a tough call and her partner is killed, only he's not. Mm-hmm. You know, so I think, yeah, I completely agree with you. I would, at least once, I would like where her instincts are incorrect.
Yeah.
You know, where she makes a mistake and then we have to deal with the consequences of that.
Because
but yeah, every time
if it's
she goes,
always correct, what's gonna happen is she's never gonna stop.
Mm-hmm.
Because
well, there's no reason for her to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we have season 5.
Yeah. That's
so
true.
maybe.
Right. So Burnham and Giorgio go to the slave camp.
Yep.
Giorgio
Against
is,
orders, yes.
Yeah,
Against
having her
orders
blackouts. Michael and Giorgio are really good at playing master and servant. Does she call her servant? I think she didn't call her.
Yeah,
servant.
I like the random little Easter eggs from past stuff because they're looking.
Oh, yeah.
Their whole cover is that they're looking for old antiques at this.
Mhm.
So like they pull out a phaser from First Contact and stuff like
Yep.
that, and they're looking for self-stealing stem bolts, which is always good.
Yep.
Yes, always looking for self-sealing stem bolts. Yeah. So that was good, and then we meet Rin. Wait,
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we meet Rin in
Rin,
this
yep.
episode.
Rin. Okay, I was having it. I swear, the names have all garbled. I'm just like, it's Tilly's husband in Blue
Noah
Maiden.
Averbach Katz is the actor.
Yes, thank you. We did again. This is going back to because Justin had connections. We did an interview with him. He's pretty cool to talk to.
Yeah, I remember he was on like all the podcasts and stuff. When
Yeah.
he first, because he's like a super nerd and was like active on. He was super active on Twitter for like a couple months before he pulled way back because he realized it had gotten ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like I remember he was following almost everybody in Trek Twitter for a while there.
Yep.
And then there were a couple of people that got really upset when he unfollowed him. Like, no, he unfollowed everybody. It's fine.
Yeah. It's not personal.
He realized.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they destroy the slave camp. They make Osira's nephew out to be a complete fool,
Which he is.
which is beautifully done. Yeah.
So my one complaint with Rin is that in Enterprise, Shran says that antennae grow back.
Well, they might have
Okay.
cauterized them or something, and
Yeah, I was gonna say they probably.
they look kind of black on the end, so maybe.
They're like
They did
red on
something.
the end, actually, I think.
Are they?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Maybe he's being continually trimmed.
That could
Maybe.
be.
That's even worse.
That is worse.
And we don't see him long enough. He doesn't get a chance for them to
Because
grow
there's
back.
that. Because he and Archer had that fight where Archer cuts off one of his antennas to
Yeah.
avoid killing him,
Yep.
Yeah.
and he talks about how it'll take months for it to grow back.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sure if Rin had survived, then Dr. Culber would have waved a light over it and it would have been all good.
Poor Rin.
Yes.
Yeah. So, do you remember what you thought about the whole thing with Giorgio? I certainly didn't ever think it was time sickness.
I had no idea
slash
what it
other
was.
No, I didn't know
thing,
either.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting idea. I liked how they connected
Oh,
it.
speaking of a thing that we see a couple times before it gets resolved, we completely ignored and didn't discuss Detmer's PTSD, which was a thing for a couple episodes.
Yes.
Yeah, well, you mentioned it just when she was in the in sick bay and just kind of left. But yeah,
Well, they
haven't
go and
talked
watch a
about it
Buster
since
Keaton
then,
movie.
Yeah, and everything's fine.
They have their Starfleet branded popcorn holders because Starfleet's still really into branding. I don't think she actually really comes out of it completely until Sanctuary.
Yeah, I agree.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. And she
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
gets back in the saddle, I guess, so to speak, and flies bookship around and saves the day. And yeah.
And Rin and the cat.
I also
What is
had
this?
initially I'd written it off as being something that they brought up and then threw out pretty quickly, but during the rewatch of this, it felt more sprinkled in because there's some moments where she hesitates and doesn't do something and then kind of comes back.
And there's the haiku about Stamets' blood.
I was just about to
Well,
say.
yeah, we completely skipped the dinner party.
Oh
The
yeah.
disastrous dinner party, yes.
He tried.
If I've been stressed and traumatized and everything, and I know all of my other friends are going to go get to do whatever the heck they want to do, and I'm being told I have to go sit down and have dinner with a bunch of people, I would not be in a great mood either. Just saying.
It's a good point. It's a point. Yeah, so then we're on to Navarre.
Mm-hmm.
Better known
So-
as Vulcan.
I find it hard to believe that Michael Burnham didn't look up Spock on Space Wikipedia when they got to
I don't at
Federation
all.
headquarters.
I don't at all. That makes perfect sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't know.
Yeah.
You know, he could have, for all she knew, you know, he could have gotten killed fixing a warp core during
Right,
the
and she
battle.
would have wanted to know. Surely she looked up her family and friends, you would think.
I don't know. I could understand why she wouldn't want to, but I mean that's you know, that's me. And obviously,
But I
none of us have been in
love
that
the scene
situation.
where she finds out about it. Though.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Also, is this telling us that Data records everything that he sees?
Apparently.
Apparently.
I like how the
And then
location
Picard
is
just-
still classified. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
right.
because that matters now. That location doesn't exist anymore. It's
Nope,
okay.
it got blown up.
You could say it was on Romulus.
Yeah.
It's not hurting anyone.
Yeah, but the original document. Think of it instead of thinking of it as a recording that can be adapted, that can be edited. Think of it as a document you're pulling out of a file from 800 years
guess.
previously.
Hmm.
You know. But yes, I don't disagree. Maybe there was a little caption on the bottom.
Mm.
This was on Romulus. Yeah, I loved that, and I love unification and Undiscovered
think
Country. That's just got a special place in
The
my heart.
fact that Burnham's mother is there and has joined the co-op a lot, I like that as a Picard tie-in. I like the Picard tie-in. It's
Did it have
very
to be her?
small universe.
Yeah.
I mean, we did need to know, well, maybe not need to know, but it was good to know what happened to her
Yes.
once all was said and done, because there was a question. But but yeah, I mean, it is small universe. It makes sense because that's a place. Although, no, now that I think about it, that doesn't at all make sense, because absolute candor would mean that she has to tell everybody about it if it comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you from? Oh, let me tell you.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, I like the fact that we tied the co-op a lot into it. I enjoy that they're doing the sort of thing that we get because as we said, this is the first season of live action Star Trek that takes place after another show has aired. And we're doing that thing they used to do in the 90s where they're referencing stuff that happens in the other shows, and I love it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. It's a cinematic universe.
Mm-hmm.
Before there were cinematic universes.
Discovery Season 3 references Picard Season 1 more than Picard Season 3 does.
Well, there's a reason for that.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, how often do you talk about things that only happened a couple of years ago compared to things that happened 30 years ago?
I just
mean,
wanted to
really.
make that joke, that's all.
Yeah, no, I know. That was perfect. It's perfect. And I was being utterly sarcastic there, so. Yeah, so then Burnham invokes a very random old Vulcan tradition for academics, which even as an academic I think is a little much, but okay.
I don't know. It
Yeah.
tracks with Vulcans that they would absolutely have this like courtroom thing that you could invoke for gaining knowledge. That sounds very Vulcan.
That sounds
to me.
very Vulcan.
It does.
Yeah.
Actually, I do love it. It's just kind of like, okay, I
Also,
demand
we should
trial
have-
by combat of information.
We
Right.
should mention that Navarre, the name for the unified Vulcan Romulan, comes from fan fiction from the 70s.
I
did not
forgot
know
about that. Yes. Yes, I love
Which
it.
I think is awesome.
Yes. And then for a while, people were saying it was standing for now it's Vulcan and Romulan. Or something like that, or Vulcan and Romulus.
Oh, I don't think I heard that. But
You
that's
never
funny.
heard that?
No.
Oh, yeah. I love it. So whoever came up with that, very imaginative. I love it. Yeah.
Now
Yes,
that's what
and-
I call Vulcan and Romulan.
There you go. And we also get the first meeting of Saru and Tarina, which is awesome.
Yes, we do.
I love
them.
What did we decide the couple name was? Serena?
It's better than Taru.
Better than Taru, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember what we said. Yeah, so that's cool. And they get the information, so they can start pinpointing and figuring out what it was, and lo and behold, the burn was not an immediate thing that happened all in one moment. So,
also, it's
off to
wild to hear that, like, that for the last 100 years, the Vulcans had thought that the Federation had forced them to cause the burn. Like, that whole thing is wild.
Yeah, I wish we'd gotten more on that. Maybe somebody will do a novel about it or something, but because that does not feel logical.
Well, I think with the combination of the Romulans, they're less logical than they used to be.
Well, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Although
yes.
it was the Romulans that were all for this, and the Vulcans that had to be convinced, so that's interesting.
That's consistent with what we learned of them from Enterprise, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very.
So,
yeah.
When Vulcans get nervous, they hide.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is logical. Right, and then off to Quajan. We find out that Book is not his name, and that he has a brother who's not his brother. And Osira's been blackmailing them for the last 15 years to make sure so that people don't starve. And then they come up with a solution to it that they really should have come up with in the first place, but that's me.
Yeah.
They just worked together. It would have helped.
But the important thing is that Quajan has been saved and nothing bad will ever happen there again.
Nope.
I know. Oh my god, the end of that is so sad.
Mm-hmm.
You watch that and you're just like, oh gods, that's no, that's not good at all. I have to wonder if the writers, like, how far out they had anything mapped for season 4.
They probably didn't.
They probably didn't, but I kind of, I wonder sometimes. Yeah, so that's Quajan. And Osira.
Yes.
So we finally do meet Osira, and she's a lot.
Janet Kidder is pretty good in this role.
She is.
Oh yeah. And she is not the mustache twirling villain that you think she's going to be.
We definitely get that in There Is a Tide when she presents actual reasonable demands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that has always bothered me about this season, is that the Emerald Chain collapses without her. After she talks about having to convince a ostensibly elected government to let her do this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where'd they go? You know? But
given the stability and all of the things going on with the Emerald Chain, is it really a good thing that they've collapsed? Like, I feel like that's going to cause a lot more upheaval.
That's the thing that she tells them. She's like, we'll withdraw over the course of 15 years because, if we just pull out, it'll be anarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think the difference is, at least I hope, is that they're thinking in post-burn mentality. But after the end of this season, the Federation can actually go out and visit places quickly again. So that changes the dynamic.
Yeah, so that's that. Okay, Terra Firma 1 and 2.
Love
Kovich sends Discovery to random ice planet. Well, it ends up just being Burnham. And
it wasn't actually Kovich. It was because Kovich was saying there was no Fury. It was,
that's right.
It was what will become Zora that did it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah. Right, Zora figures out. Kovich, though, confirms Kelvin timeline.
Yes.
Yes, he does.
With the guy in the TNG season 1 uniform.
Which was another Trek Twitter kerfuffle because
Do tell.
Because we saw a promo shot for this episode with that, and he was wearing a Voyager era comm badge on the TNG season 1 uniform and they fixed it for the episode.
Yeah.
But in the promo shot, it was Voyager, and Twitter lost its freaking mind.
I missed
Further
that.
proof these people don't understand Star Trek.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Again, it's the reenactors. They don't know what they're doing.
But yes, this is the
I
first mention of the Kelvin timeline in the Prime timeline.
And also absolutely positively confirms that there's multiple, at least Mirror and Kelvin, which means there's more.
And we find out that the reason Georgiou's having problems is because she came from a different universe and jumped forward in time, because one of those things is fine. It's when you do both that you start to apparently
right, and because
rip apart. Yeah,
somehow the universes are drifting apart for
reasons. Wasn't sure how that works, but yes.
I just assumed that was like galactic spread, the same way that galaxies are drifting apart. But
maybe.
I mean, I guess I didn't really think about it that hard either. So,
or is it that with each change between each difference, they become farther and farther separated?
Yeah,
maybe.
I think it depends on which version of alternate universes you take.
Yeah.
And Star Trek uses both, because somehow we have alternate universes that broke apart 100 years previously, and yet all of the same people seem to come together to have children.
Yeah, because the mirror universe has been different at least as far back as 2063. We don't know that was the one moment that changed.
High Holy Day.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's the first moment we know was different. There probably were differences before that. So yeah, none of those people should be alive. None of the people and I think we talked about this in season 1. None of those people, none of the mirror universe counterparts should exist, and certainly not by DS9, where like Earth doesn't even really exist as a civilization anymore.
Right.
And a hologram's actually a person. Yep.
Well, yeah, that's a whole thing.
I love it.
Anyway, but I really enjoy these episodes.
Me too.
I always love it when we get to see the our characters hamming it up as Mirror, and we get to see Mirror Burnham for the first time.
Yep.
So good.
And she's so great.
Yep.
We get to see Landry again and die again.
Mirror Stamets dies again.
Mirror Stamets dies. Oh, that was so good when she just turns around and stabs him. Actually, she stabs him without even turning around. That's the best part.
Yep.
I enjoyed this a lot. I loved Carl.
Yes.
He was so good.
And
I really enjoy, because I'm not really separating these two episodes because it's one story.
No.
But I like that we do get to see that Georgiou, despite how ruthless she appears, really has been changed by her time spent with our heroes. And I liked the inverted color and orientation of the theme for the second half. The only thing that bugs me is the guy that they catch in the shuttle at the end, Duggan, was clearly created as a placeholder when they couldn't get Jason Isaacs back to play Lorca.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is too bad.
Yeah.
But maybe at some point on Strange New Worlds we'll see
Prime Lorca. I'm hoping.
Yeah. So Georgiou goes and tries to fix things. Ends up dead. I love.
She does still save Saru's life though.
Yeah, and he's gonna go be Savage Saru now. Action Saru, however you want to put him. Which maybe, you can draw lines between that and Mirror and how things move forward, maybe. So,
I mean, it's clearly a different universe from the Mirror universe already, just because so many people died that are alive in the Discovery Season 1 arc.
Yeah.
Which one is the mirror universe and which one is the mirror universe of the mirror universe?
This is the alternate mirror universe. But also, this timeline, I view this as this timeline never really existed. It's all just a construct made by the Guardian.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I don't think any of that.
That's how I always saw it. Yeah.
It was the test, like he says.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then she runs off to do season 1 of Section 31, and that was fantastic.
Oops.
After this, right?
Yeah, season 1 of Section 31 that we got in 2021, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's my only real complaint about these 2 episodes, because I think they're a lot of fun and they're great. It's just they're clearly setting up something that then we never got, and there are enough things in the rest of the season that I would have loved to see get another hour or 2 of fleshing out, in retrospect. But
I think if the pandemic hadn't happened, we would have. Because yes, Strange New Worlds stole its production spot. We all know this, but I think if the pandemic hadn't happened, they would have done both at the same time.
Yeah, I think you're right.
There's no reason. There would have been no reason, or at least subsequently. Yeah,
because this was before streaming services started canceling all their stuff.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and Paramount does know that it's Star Trek fans that are holding up that streaming service. So
yes,
not that I want it to go anywhere.
If it merges with other streaming services, so I don't have to pay as much, I'm okay with that.
Oh, I'm down with that. Yeah. What are they talking about? Streaming or merging with Peacock?
Current rumor is Peacock. Yes.
Plus.
That makes so much sense to me because there are so many CBS made shows that were on NBC back in the day and vice versa.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Frasier.
It just Cheers is the first one that comes to mind, and Frasier goes with that. So it's just,
but yes,
other than
I'm
Star
down
Trek.
with Mount Cock Plus.
No, Cockmount Plus.
I like Mount Cock better.
You like Mount Cock better? Okay.
I love how someone tweeted that saying Mount Cock Plus, and then Anson Mount
even
quoted
think
it and
about
saying,
that.
"I endorse this idea."
Yes. No.
Oh, I missed that. I would have retweeted that. I love it. Okay. Wow. Oh, if they do that, I hope we get one more of those Paramount Mountain commercials and the peacocks at the top. Just like I own the mountain.
Oh, I suppose that was news. We got a fucked up Paramount commercial.
Throw the child.
Oh God. That was.
He threw me higher.
I know Patrick Stewart likes to do weird humor.
Yes.
Anybody who saw his SNL hosting in the 90s, the dirty cake bit, it's just he does weird humor. I get it. But...
Or the Stars show Blunt Talk.
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah, that whole,
His bit on extras, if
throwing...
you saw that.
Really, the only thing,
that,
the only good thing in that commercial was when he tells Drew Barrymore to shut up. I liked that.
That was good.
I liked him ripping.
I like that he was in the old
and
football
having his his robe, and then he has that old timey football uniform on underneath.
And he has his plays written out on the
Throw the child.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll call that news. That's news. Yep. So Giorgio goes off into the sunset. And then we go find the boy who caused the burn. Sukal. Although we don't know it until the next episode, I think. But
I think we get hints at it.
No, we do find it.
Yeah.
We do find out in this episode.
Okay. At this point, I can't remember. You watch him and it's all kind of clumps together.
Yeah, no, because Discovery is still there when...
that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, so they find Sukal, who is, to me, a ripoff of... the kid that Riker finds who has the holographic environment.
Barash.
But, Barash, thank you, yes. But he'll always be Jean-Luc to me. But I thought it was kind of cool how we got to see Doug Jones without makeup.
Yes.
And, everybody else a little bit different, so...
And everybody gets to see Gray. Oh, well, that's technically in another episode, but yeah.
That is the next episode, but it's still, it's awesome. That's how we figure out that, he's not just the imaginary friend.
Yeah.
which that's 2 seasons in a row of that. I meant to mention that earlier. I forgot that we have an imaginary friend we have to figure out who isn't.
Yeah, I guess we hadn't really... We, like, mentioned Gray a couple times, but we didn't really like, talk about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's more... We'll get into that next season more.
Yeah, it'll be a much bigger thing next season.
When he gets his body. So what do you guys think about... let's just go through the Sakal storyline.
Yeah, like,
in its
let's
entirety
just
here. That's
combine
easiest,
these last
yeah.
3 episodes.
Yeah, they're all
Yeah.
one big story.
Because they are all together, yeah.
Yeah.
So Sukal, I know you guys have thoughts.
I don't like it.
Okay.
That's my big overriding
That's your thought?
I do not like that it is... That the entire story, the whole story about how all of the dilithium all over the galaxy stopped working and caused all these ships to explode was because a kid screamed when his mother died. I don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Carl, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't love the solution they came up with, but I applaud them for trying something different.
Yeah, okay.
I appreciate that, and I think I really liked everything else about the Sukal story, about how he grew up in this environment, and it's this weird, like, MC Escher painting almost of stairways and these weird monsters flying around and everything, and it's a interesting mystery about what's going on in this environment that they land on. It's not a great answer, I don't think. But it's one that, as long as I can get over the whole, well, he was exposed to dilithium in utero and it caused him to have this weird connection to dilithium or something, which doesn't make any sense, but then it's Star Trek pseudoscience and a lot of times doesn't make sense.
Like, I can almost buy the radiation in utero changing it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
how did the dilithium get in his mother's womb?
I don't know.
Yeah. That's and even so, like, it destroys everything. Like, if it had destroyed that planet and turned it into a nebula.
Well, it's because they also establish in this that dilithium is linked
Subspace.
together by subspace.
Yeah.
Which I also don't buy.
No, that doesn't make any sense at all. But
Nope.
Whatever. I liked the idea of random person having a massive effect on history. Okay. And I know that's my historian brain going. But things happen like that sometimes. I was just this is totally off-topic Chrissie's History Corner, but I've been reading a book about George III and Charlotte. And in that is discussion of the kids and everything. And George, the son who becomes George IV, didn't like his wife and found her to be so disgusting because she didn't like to bathe that it's likely they only slept together 3 times, and so they only have 1 child, and that child died in childbirth, which is why Victoria was in a position to become queen, which completely changes everything. So it's that like random, admittedly Sukal's not royalty or anything like that, but it's that random one thing that can have such a massive effect.
I mean, if my wife didn't like to bathe, I would probably have a similar reaction.
But yeah, so I think it is a weird solution, but I like that idea of this one person just randomly has that massive effect and doesn't know it.
And I will say, Bill Irwin plays Sukal very well.
Yes, he does.
You know what?
Yes.
If that were just part of a story that they came across, if you take out the burn part, that is such a fantastic story. It's just so good. Yeah. And then Osira captures the Discovery.
Yep.
You there?
Yep,
Yeah.
that happened.
Mm-hmm.
The way you say that.
I don't like how quick it was. Like, it's just like, boom, she has Discovery now.
Well, it was almost as quick as the Ferengi took over the Enterprise that one time.
Yes, that's true.
So, plot point. And then head back to Federation headquarters, and we have Aurelia.
And she ends
who
up
is trying
being
to figure out
foiled
the
because
sword
she
drive.
never had full control of the computer, so it's just like Rascals.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Just instead of children, it's dots. My favorite, I love There Is a Tide because it does. Osiris is not just a complete villain.
Right.
She's a politician, which, you know, make all the jokes you like about whether that's worse. But I like the idea of here is an organization that, while it has based itself in a lot of very violent things and terrible things, that given this lack of dilithium and given what they know could happen and how everything's going to go to hell, that she's willing to negotiate and negotiate some very important elements of their society. So I like that.
No, that is my favorite part of. I mean, let's leave the Su'Kal part aside. Like, of the rest of the end of this episode of the season, it's also the part that frustrates me the most because I think it's a really interesting, and I love those scenes with Vance and Osira, where you know you have the Eli thing, and he keeps saying no, she's telling the truth, and you see Vance grapple with the idea that this is a legitimate offer, and he makes a quite valid counteroffer to her, and she just blows the whole thing up and storms away, and we get a whole bunch of action adventure shooting stuff to close out the story. And I kind of wish that hadn't been where they went. I like I like politics in my Star Trek, and I like when they do
Me too.
these interesting things, and I thought that it was a really interesting potential idea that they then kind of threw out the window in favor of something else, and that kind of bugged me a little bit.
Yeah. This does have one of my favorite lines in Trek, when Vance says, "History is the only light with which we can see the future," which I made a nice little pretty plaque out of. Well, it's not plaque, but a piece of paper that looks like a plaque, and stuck it on the wall of my office because, you know, it works for me. So. And then we also have the confirmation that where the base materials for the replicators come from, just in case you weren't sure.
Yep, it's pretty good for shit.
Actually, and there's another Picard season 1 connection, the realness of the fruit, and
Yep.
you know.
Yeah.
All right, and then we come to and Aurelio. Gods, I forgot about. Ken
we
Mitchell.
have to talk.
Yeah.
I
about
gotta
him.
say,
Yeah.
I mean, I watched this
Yes.
episode this morning.
Yes, as did I.
Literal tears when Aurelio showed up, just because of the whole thing. Yeah. I was gonna say, and this was obviously the first time he shot something after he had been diagnosed, and that's why he was in the chair. And it was just handled so well.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Yeah. Did you think that he was with Osira because he talked about how he has children in his family? I was almost sure until she talked about how she refers to it as your family to him, that Osira was the mother of his children.
I never thought that.
No.
Oh, God, yeah. I thought. Okay, never mind. I just how I read that. Yeah. Okay. So he's trying to figure out the spore drive, and he's trying to have a nice scientist to scientist conversation with Stamets, and Stamets is explaining to him how he doesn't see anything that's going on, and he doesn't.
Yeah, he really doesn't.
Until the next episode. Yeah. Which was the other reason why I thought maybe that they were together, but so then finally we have...
It's so sad because this is a character that absolutely could have come back in the next season and this season, and unfortunately.
Yeah. Right, so then we finally have part 2 of That Hope Is You. We find out that Book can guide the spore drive. Which is kind of cool. Sukal goes home with Saru. Burnham kills Osira. She gets promoted to captain. And on to season 4. That's the short version.
Yes, that's the short version.
Yeah.
There Is a Tide. Did we talk about Stamets getting kicked off the ship?
Yeah, I wanted to go.
Oh my
back to
god,
that.
no! I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The listeners are like, it's been 2.5 hours, and we're like, it's been 2.5 hours, and that's fine.
Yeah.
That's
It's such a disappointing choice.
Yes.
I love the scene with Stamets and Aurelio was so well done, and I love the line that Stamets has where he says, Osira may be more than she appears to be, but there are times when she is exactly how she appears to be. And he sees what's going on here. But they made the decision that it would be better to essentially sideline somebody who has personal attachments to 2 of the 3 people who are stuck on the planet with Sukal.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I find it a bit weird that he's immediately referring to Adira as his child.
Yes.
That's a step too far for me. But other than that, and I just don't like how we're going to send him away so Michael Burnham is the center of attention again.
Yeah.
They could have done everything they did in this episode and not sent Stamets away. And by the way, for the second time in 2 seasons, where Stamets has little to no role to play in the end of the season.
Yeah.
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I had
that's just
true.
my soapbox a little bit.
It's all right.
I don't I understand Michael's reasoning. I'm not completely against that.
She takes away all of his agency in this moment, though, and she knocks him out. She puts him in a bubble. She blows out the window with a phaser against, and he's protesting and the whole time very emotionally. Like it's just not good. I don't like it.
Yeah, and Michael could say that it's the logical choice, and he's not thinking logically. But when has that ever stopped her?
Mm-hmm.
When she lived with Sarek.
On that same note, there's the scene earlier in Sukal when she says she's worried about Saru not being able to think rationally, not being able to like let his his personal feelings cloud his judgment. And I'm like, that's rich, a little rich coming from you.
Well, yeah. But
But yeah, I don't like that Stamets isn't there. I think he should have been there for the finale.
Yeah. But then we wouldn't have had the opportunity to find out that Book could do the spore drive just in time, so that we don't get blowed up.
Yeah, and then we would have had to do season 4 differently, I suppose.
Very differently, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm out of things to say about this. I think it was a good season.
I think that's the problem we have with these recaps is, but by the time we get to the end of the season, we've been talking for a couple hours. So we just have less energy.
Yeah. Which is it's too bad because it's where a lot of the energy is in the season. But
I will say that There Is a Tide. Is a Jonathan Frakes episode that I don't think I could ever sleep through.
So good. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say about the end of this episode of the season is I've never cared for this look of the Starfleet uniform, and I'm glad that they reversed it for season 4.
Very glad they reversed it.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they made that decision very quickly into season 4 when they realized that the uniforms blended into the background on the Discovery set in like every shot.
Yep.
Oh, there was a uniform mistake that they made at the end.
Oh yeah.
And this was another thing that got some. Again, there was a Twitter storm about a production photo. in a promo shot, we saw them in uniform on the ship before the episode aired. And Tilly was wearing red, and there was a whole bunch of discussion about that. And then it turns out that was an accident, and they meant for it to be blue, because when the episode actually airs, in that shot, Tilly's uniform has been painted with computer graphics to blue, and when you know that, it is incredibly obvious to see, because there are no shadows on that. It's one same. It's like they took they opened it in MS Paint and hit the paintbrush tool, the paint bucket tool. Yeah.
Anything else we want to say about
Not at the moment.
Season 3?
We've covered it. Yeah.
I think we have. I'm sure we forgot something. People will tell us. They do.
People will tell us.
Yes. All right. Well, Carl, thank you so very much for joining us for this somewhat protracted discussion today, but you're a good person to have on for that. Where can listeners find you online, and what current and upcoming work would you like to mention?
So I'm on the Twitter, Mastodon, and Blue Sky conglomerates at Listening to Film. And I do another podcast with Thad that we're releasing again called License to Spiel, and we're currently in the process of figuring out what we're going to do with it next, because we're running out of franchises to talk about. So we will stay tuned. We'll figure that out and get back to you.
Thad, where can people find you when you're not trying out new captain's phrases?
I think Manifest was a good one, personally.
I did too.
As Carl mentioned, you can hear me on License to Spiel. It's licensed to the C, like the British do it. And you can also catch me on Twitter, Mastodon, Blue Sky, and Threads at Tyrannicus. That's Tyranicus. Chrissie, where can people find you when you're not making new food out of shit?
Oh, I love that about the replicators. I mean, it's kind of, I hate it, but I love it because it's so efficient, and it's so would solve world hunger and all of that. So yeah, in addition to here on Infinite Diversity, you can hear me on History with the Szilagys here on the BQN. That's that short history podcast I do with my fellow historian partner Jason. Also happy to chat about our shows on the BQN Collective on Facebook. And I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky at the Goddess Livia. That's TheGoddessLivia, where you can read my opinions on Star Trek history and leftist politics.
Don't forget all our other great shows on BQN. Here's a recording of Chrissie from the past to tell you all about them.
Yes, from the past. What else can you listen to on the BQN? Replicate yourself a mug of hot chocolate and join Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin as they discuss everything and anything in the Star Trek universe on All Good Things. Boost yourself with an energy drink and join Davey on YouTube and Twitch for reviews and live streams of classic, cheap, and sometimes more recent video games on Bargain Bin Gamer. Brew yourself a pot of coffee and join Jeremiah to discuss Star Trek Voyager on The Captain's Couch. Mix your favorite cocktail and join Mark and Matt at Cinema Z to discuss the films you probably missed but should definitely check out. Pour a cup of tea, Earl Grey, hot, and listen to Stephen and Keith as they discuss the next generation of Trek on Galaxy Class. Get yourself something caffeinated and learn an interesting bit of history with Chrissie and Jason on History with the Szilagys. Have a bowl of Flo-Meek soup and join Thad and Chrissie and a guest to discuss new episodes of Star Trek as they are released on Infinite Diversity. Have something to sharpen your mind and put your Trek knowledge to the test with the Treksperts quiz. Take a bite out of something that didn't seem edible and join Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley covering all things in New Trek, including that show that is Trek in all but name, The Orville, on Union Federation. Get your Sunday brunch ready for The View Screen, a live weekly talk show hosted by Kelvin and Amy with featured guests talking about all things Trek. Pour a glass of wine and spill some tea with Christos while he discusses current Trek news and events and explores the world of fandom via guest interviews, all with an LGBTQIA+ perspective on What's the Tea, Bev? And Patreon members get to pass around that green bottle of Aldebaran whiskey once a month on the round table, and they can listen to It's Green with Mark White and Amy's Math Moments. And thank you so much for tuning into Infinite Diversity. Thank you to Zach Tripp for the wonderful theme music and Mark White for the awesome show art. Please subscribe in your favorite podcast player, and don't forget to rate and review us there as well.
If you want to reach out, you can find the network on Twitter at BQN Podcasts, or our show specifically at IDIC Podcast. You can also talk about any and all of the BQN podcasts in our Facebook group, the BQN Collective. When you next hear from us, we'll be recapping Season 4 of Discovery. Until then, peace and long life.